remember sitting in Parliament in February 2020, listening to Boris make a speech, and I sat there and I thought, oh my goodness, we are going to change this country for the better. We are going to be in power for 10 years and we are going to do some great things.
This is the exit interview of Nickie Aiken, Conservative MP for Cities of London and Westminster since 2019. Welcome to your exit interview.
Thank you, Matt.
So let's start with the obvious question. Why are you leaving us?
Well, because my husband has got a job overseas and my youngest child leaves school this summer, finishes A-levels, so he'll be going off hopefully to college. So it seemed like the perfect timing that I don't really want to be left at home alone, to be honest. And so I thought I would go and support my husband.
It's not because you thought you might lose your seat?
I don't think I would lose my seat. I think that I think I would win my seat. And I don't want that to sound arrogant, because it probably does. But I have been told by several pollsters that they thought that I would win because I have very much worked my constituency. Every pledge I made in 2019 I have kept, and I've succeeded in the campaigns I promised I would lead. And I'm very much known in Westminster. I'm a local person. My Labour and Lib Dem candidates are not local. They come from outside Westminster in particular. So, look, you could never say never, but I think Westminster and the City of London will be retained by the Conservatives.
What about the fact that, and I take on board your husband's got a job abroad, but, you know, I spoke to Steve Bryan, one of your colleagues, a couple of weeks ago, and he said he's not standing down because he thought he might lose. He's standing down because he's worried he might win. And that actually being in opposition in a run for Tory Party with probably a lot of colleagues who you don't necessarily share their politics despite sharing the party, has that played a part in it at all? If the Tories were 20 points ahead in the polls, you're on course for a majority, you were heading for the cabinet, you'd probably stay, wouldn't you?
Look, I have thought about this because I never, ever thought I would not stand. I didn't think I'd stand for a third term. I always thought I would stand for 2 terms because it is exhausting. I mean, it is fascinating. The more you get involved in it, the more you want to do it. But I think 2 terms is enough. And I'm 55, I'd be 60. That would be plenty for me. But
20 years younger than the US president.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and his opponent. But I think I'm like over 10 years older than the Prime Minister. But no, I do think this is. I would have done another term, but I'm not going to be home alone. My children left home. My husband will have had, has got a really excellent opportunity over in the UAE. And so I think it's time for me to support him. He's been the most amazing support to me over the last 18 years. I mean, I have been doing this for 18 years, not just as an MP, but I was a councillor at Westminster, in the cabinet there, then the leader. So I have been, very much in frontline politics in Westminster for 18 years. And I think it's time that I supported Alex.
Is it a funny job being the MP for Westminster? Is it easier? Because, I mean, you're not travelling from the Outer Hebrides every week and, your life is all in one place. But you are the MP for all MPs. Yes,
and I do get casework from MPs, believe me.
Usually, what do they complain about?
Usually about council tax and trying to get... usually because they haven't received their bill. Or I had a Labour MP come up to me last week and wanting help with his lifts. So I am. But... look, I never leave my constituency. I live and work here, and I have lived in my constituency for 27 years, I think. But it's an honour to do it. It is. I really do love this place. People always think Central London, it's full of strangers. It's not. It's neighbourhoods. It's communities. It's people who care about their local areas. And I have a monthly call with resident associations. There's about 25 people on there from across the constituency, and they're passionate about their local areas and working with me to improve it. So I'm really going to miss my constituency more than anything else. I will miss the people. I will miss the constituency. I'm not sure I will miss the the politics of it all, which is, has surprised me somewhat over the last couple of years.
What do you mean by that?
Just how nasty things have become, and how black and white things have become. I think political discourse is at risk in this country, to be honest, Matt. I think what is happening in the Middle East at the moment has really brought that to the forefront. And what's shocked me more than anything else is over the last few months, I've had thousands of emails, and I'm not exaggerating, and I think most MPs have had thousands of emails about the situation in Gaza, and people are rightly concerned. Nobody should not be concerned about what we're seeing, what's going on in Gaza, but nobody in those emails that I can recall has mentioned the hostages, has mentioned what actually happened on the 7th of October.
These emails about the situation in Gaza,
the ceasefire,
and why aren't you doing more?
And stopping.
So it's what you'd characterise as pro-Palestinian emails. Yeah.
And it shocks me that, and I've met constituents who want to talk about the situation, and I'm more than happy to talk about the situation, but they never mention the hostages, and they never mention what happened on the 7th of October. And I chose not to go and watch we've been offered, MPs, and many MPs have across the House have watched the filming that the Hamas terrorists took themselves of what they were actually doing on the 7th of October. I chose not to watch that because I don't think you can ever unsee it. But I've heard testimony, and I've met families of hostages, and I think it's too often we have forgotten what actually happened on the 7th of October. No matter what you think about the two-state solution and what's happening in the Palestine. I went to the West Bank back in 22, and I was shocked at how many Israeli settlements there are in the West Bank. I think I was quite ignorant about the situation. And I also went to the IDF facility right next to Gaza, which monitors the fence. So I was really shocked when it actually happened on the 7th of October because, from what I had seen, you couldn't move an inch along that fence without being seen. So there are questions to be answered by the Israeli government. But I do think that it has become so black and white, and it never is. Nothing is ever black and white. And I think I do get worried about meeting students, particularly Jewish students, over the last couple of months who are too scared to actually admit they're Jewish. And how have we got to this stage in this country where you are hiding your identity? I had a group of school children come and visit back in November. I mean, they were primary school pupils. They were like 9, 10-year-old boys, all wearing baseball caps. And I said to their teacher, why are they wearing baseball caps? And they said, because they've got to hide their kippers, their skull caps. These were British-born children in a British school visiting the British Parliament, hiding their identities. How have we got to this stage? And, I absolutely have no issue with people protesting on a Saturday. We had one, last Saturday with tens of thousands of people who are very concerned. And, I share their concerns about what's going on in Gaza. I want it to stop. I don't think there's an MP in Parliament who doesn't want it to stop. But we have got to ensure that we remember that it's never black and white. There's always...
You don't have to pick a side on everything.
No.
You can think that what happened on October the 7th was terrible and what's happening in Gaza was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And they are both equally terrible.
Yeah.
And it's innocent people and children and women and men who are civilians who are being, maimed, killed, made homeless from this. Neither side will ever be a winner, sadly.
You talked about how you'd noticed that in the last year or two, the political discourse had changed. I wondered which you preferred, being an MP for Westminster or being the council leader. Is there one job? Do you have more levers to pull in one job or the other?
They're very different. I mean, I think that was a bit of a lesson for me when I turned up, having been the leader and what I wanted happened, and then realising very, very quickly that you're just basically vote fodder, really. And look, I love both jobs. They're both very different. And I think, just learned over the last 4 or 5 years now that how you can achieve. And everything I promised I would do, short-term lets registration, the government has announced that. Leasehold reform, government is working on that now. And also, my infamous, probably almost legendary pedicabs bill.
But this is registering pedicabs, which are the noisy things which rip off tourists in central London.
Exactly. And, I've had 2 private members' bills. It was my biggest campaign issue for my local area. Look, we're not talking about the economy and crime. Obviously, those are national and local issues. But for my specific issue is pedicabs. They are a nightmare for local people and local businesses, and they're not registered or licensed, and anybody can drive them. They're not, and the vehicles are not checked, and there's no fare structure. So you get dreadful examples of tourists being ripped off 100, 200 quid to go half a mile. So I was determined to get them licensed. I had 2 private members' bills. They didn't get through because, we all know it's notoriously hard to get a private member's bill, even with the government's backing. And then dear old Boris, remember him? He was really keen for me to succeed. And I remember one Saturday morning, I was up early for some reason, and I got a text from him when he was Prime Minister. And it was like, how are you getting on with pedicabs? And I said, nowhere, because it keeps getting thrown out. And he said, leave it with me. And a couple of hours later, he sent another text. I've sorted it. Speak to Grant, chaps. It's going to be in the transport bill. Wow. Great. Thank you. Unfortunately, bit of a fly in the ointment was that he then resigned.
Yeah.
And the transport bill
why did
left him.
He had a Friday night out and been ripped off? Is that why he suddenly had any interest?
Mayor of London.
Oh, yeah.
He knew. And it's, I'm not going to bore your listeners with the plights of the pedicab legislation, but it's only in London you can't register them or license them because it's an anomaly of the 1864 Act or something. So he was really supportive, and then he went, and then Rishi came in, so they had to start again. And bless Rishi and bless the guys from Number 10 understood, and then gave me the pedicabs bill in the King's Speech, and it's coming through now.
Well, hopefully pass them before you stand down.
Well, it's going to the Commons in the next week or so.
I wanted to ask you what the mood is like amongst Tory MPs, because so many of you have announced you're standing down for all sorts of reasons. Some who've been MPs for a long time, others who, like you, only elected in 2019 and are getting out the first available opportunity. What's it like? What is the mood? Do you feel like you're part of a gang of the standing downers? Are you in a WhatsApp group?
No, there's no WhatsApp. I'm in enough WhatsApp groups. I don't need any more, thanks. No, I think you're right. I think lots of people are leaving for completely different reasons. So I'm leaving because of personal reasons. Deanna's leaving for the personal reasons. But a lot of people are leaving because they've been there 10, 15 years. And it is a tough life. And if you've been a minister, and you've done 10, 15 years, I can understand that actually, if there is a possibility, and it's still an if, that we will be in opposition, then do you want to be an opposition MP when you've been in government? And many people have been in opposition government, and now who knows? Yeah. So I can understand it can be, such a, I don't want to sound like I'm getting the violins out, because it is a privilege to be one of the 650 people.
So some people be shouting at the radio. You're supposed to be there regardless. You can't just be like goal hanging for being in government. The politics should be about, you want to be the local MP, you want to be in Parliament making a difference and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you should be there. You should be there. But if you've done it and you've been a minister, I can understand why people would...
They're wanting out now.
I would be standing again if it wasn't for my family's circumstances. I can promise you that. It's just sometimes life throws you a curveball, and you just got to grab it.
So you haven't been a minister, but you have been both a vice chairman and a deputy chairman of the Conservative Party.
And a PPS.
And when you came on our end of year quiz, and halfway through the end of year quiz, you revealed that I'd been wrong to keep describing you as the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. So, what are the differences in the jobs? What do they involve, and why are you no longer deputy chairman of the Conservative Party?
Well, I was vice chairman under Boris. And then I resigned because I was just sick to death of all the party gay, and I just didn't want to be part of it. I just wanted to be free and say, not in my name, Gov. I did tell him why I was standing down. He accepted it. Well,
how did he take that?
He accepted it. And then I was appointed. I mean, I was shocked to be appointed under Liz Truss. I think I was one of a few of Rishi's supporters who got given a job, and then kept on by Rishi when Rishi took over 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. And the deputy chairman is a paid role. you get paid. A vice chairman, you don't get paid. And then you do have a lot more responsibility as deputy, because you are standing in for the chairman. And, I was actually deputy chairman in between Nadeem Sahari and Greg Hands. We had about a month, I think, 3 weeks between the two of them. Well, Nadeem standing down and Greg being appointed. So then I just stepped in and did a lot more for CCHQ. And look, I love being deputy chairman, but because it's a payroll position, you have to then, vote with the government. You can't put down amendments to bills, etc. And I wanted the freedom, particularly in the last year of the Parliament, I wanted the freedom to be able to put down amendments and try and change legislation, like particularly the leasehold bill that's coming up, the criminal justice bill that's coming up, and I wouldn't be able to do that as a payroll. And for me, it was more important to represent my constituents and represent what I want to do and change than being a deputy chairman. So I'd asked the chief whip back in September, look, I want to step down. It wasn't a huge, I need to go now, but I said, when there's the next reshuffle, I want to step down. I'd had a few health issues with my thyroid, so that wasn't helping the situation as well. So I just thought it was time. I couldn't do everything, so I stepped down as deputy chairman. So when the reshuffle came in November, I just went, and it wasn't a big deal. I don't think many people knew.
It was such a big deal, I didn't notice.
Well, exactly, nobody noticed it. So and that's the whole point, really. Yeah. So I don't,
So you don't get, although you're being paid, you don't get the upside of being a minister and being in the Commons and all of that, but you are on the payroll.
I have to go on GB News and LBC and Times Radio and justify things. And now I still do, but I don't have to always.
You don't have to be quite so positive.
Yeah.
Let's turn our attention to some of your bosses. We ask everyone of all parties who's done this.
I've had a few.
To sum up their former bosses in a word. So you came in 2019 under Boris Johnson. Sum up Boris Johnson in a word.
Chaotic, probably. And that, I think the thing about Boris, and I hope history will be more kinder to him, because, he did get some of the big issues right. He did get the vaccine programme up and running, and he saw that from the very beginning, that we were only going to get out of COVID with a vaccine, and he pushed that forward and got the right people dealing with that. He got Ukraine right. He was absolutely right on Ukraine, and we have to keep supporting Ukraine. And I do fear that there is a bit of, the West are starting to tire, and we have got to keep going and supporting Ukraine. So I think, but the thing about Boris is he is so charismatic, and he does reach many voters that other politicians don't reach. But I just don't think he ever had the temperament and the right people around him from the beginning. I think if he had the people he had towards the end around him, and he was a brilliant mayor. He was a brilliant mayor because David Cameron and George Osborne knew exactly what he would be like, and so ensured that he had the right people around him, like my former leader, Simon Milton, and then Eddie Lister and other people who were basically running City Hall, and he was the frontman. That is what he should have had in number 10. And I think he would have been, probably with the right people managing him, I think he could have been an outstanding Prime Minister. Sadly, he just didn't have the right people. And
that's ultimately his fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, exactly. And you have to accept that. And, he just basically brought the Leave campaign with him. And, the Conservative Party, as we all say, is a broad church, Matt. And, you had to have people. It was about the Conservative government and the Conservative Party. It wasn't about Leave. And I think we'd have had a lot more of success. And then obviously we had COVID, and who would have expected, a once in 100-year pandemic to hit the world? And that meant that a lot of the things that we had hoped to do. I remember sitting in Parliament in February 2020, listening to Boris make a speech, and I sat there and I thought, oh my goodness, we are going to change this country for the better. We are going to be in power for 10 years, and we are going to do some great things. Little did I know that a month later, COVID was going to hit, and then...
But do you not think that actually, if it hadn't been COVID and Partygate, there'd have been something else? It was just in his temperament, in his nature, that surrounding himself with people who, didn't have necessarily his best interests at heart.
Yeah.
only told him what he wanted to hear because he didn't want to hear it. You know, it was in his nature. If it wasn't lying about Partygate, it'd probably been lying about something else.
Well, he does have a bit of a reputation of, you know, I always said he always treated the party like his wife and treated the economy like his own personal finances. But look, I just think he got us elected, and he got us elected in seats that we hadn't held in 100 years. So you have to give him, you have to give him the credit for that, for bringing in a wave of voters. And I think he was right when he said that they lent us their vote, which they did.
And do you think they're about to take it back?
Well, let's see. I don't see much, to be honest. There's not much enthusiasm for Labour. Let's be honest. I mean,
well,
if you see
from a 20, 25 point lead in the polls and winning by-elections in every part of the country.
But then look at the by-elections, Matt. Look at the vote. The vote. They're not voting for Labour. They're just not voting for us.
That's how you win elections.
Yeah, but look at Kingswood. I mean, there's no enthusiasm. It was like 100 votes more than 2019.
Yeah.
That is not a Tony Blair landslide. And believe me, I was there in 96, 97. I was working in central office. I've been in the Conservative Party all my adult life. I've been in it for 36 years. So I've been there, done that, seen it all. And this is not Tony Blair.
Well, let's not worry about Tony Blair. Let's talk about some of your other bosses. Let's sum up. So Boris Johnson was chaotic. Liz Truss, in a word.
Over-promoted.
So do you think is that the fault of David Cameron, Theresa May, that she shouldn't have been in cabinet jobs from which she could launch her leadership?
I just think that I don't really know Liz, to be honest. I've had a couple of conversations with her, but I've never really been part of that team. And so, but I don't think she was ever Prime Minister material. So
why is it then that the Tory Party twice put people who weren't really Prime Minister material into the job of being Prime Minister?
Well, you see, when you talk about Boris could have been he did have the attributes for communication, for being able to, he could see the bigger picture. He did see the vaccine programme, he did see Ukraine, and he did make the right calls at that right time. But on the day-to-day, being Prime Minister, I couldn't think of anything worse, to be honest, than being Prime Minister. It is a tough gig. And that's why I honestly worry about the possibility of Keir Starmer. He's not showing the grip and the gut instinct and, the attributes that you need to be Prime Minister. You need to be able to just go ahead and not flip-flop, not change your mind. And I think with Boris, he had the potential to be a great Prime Minister if he'd had the right people around him. Liz, I don't think. Liz was, everything Rishi warned in the leadership contests came true about her economic plan. I'm remortgaging at the moment, thanks Liz. How
much more are you paying as a result of Liz Truss?
A couple of £100 a month.
Yeah. We should ask her for that back.
Yeah, exactly.
She used some of her American money.
Yeah.
So, over-promoted. Rishi Sunak, in a word.
Honourable. Yeah, what really annoys me about the criticism that he gets is that they say he's too rich to care, he's too rich to understand. You could flip it the other way and say, well, why does he need to do this? He doesn't need to do this. And he does. And the hours he puts in, he is, and he's so on the detail. He's such an impressive man. I first met him in 2017 when I was leader of the council, Westminster Council, and he was local government minister. And I walked in because I wanted to change council tax banding. And he knew exactly all the detail, even then, as in his first job. And he does care. He is determined to improve things. And, again, it's always events, isn't it? It's always events that get you in the end.
It's events and colleagues. What's your message to your colleagues who seem addicted to removing Prime Ministers? Yeah,
look, I was there in the 90s and several of my colleagues were there in the 90s, and you just think, haven't you learnt? And we saw it with Labour in the, in 2015 and beyond, when they were not as united as they should have been under Jeremy Corbyn. The public want to see unified parties working together for the greater good of the country, which is absolutely right, whether it's Labour or the Conservatives. And I would say that if we don't unite, if we don't get behind the Prime Minister and the Cabinet and this Conservative government, the alternative is socialism. And Keir Starmer is no Tony Blair. Tony Blair was a social democrat, in my view. He also inherited a booming economy. Was it like about 4% growth?
There's no danger of him doing
well,
that.
Well, ours is flatlining. Yeah. Whatever we're doing, and it's not just flatlining in the UK, it's flatlining across the world. If you look at what's going on in Europe and France and Germany, you know, they're having strikes in France and Germany like never before. So it's not just a UK issue, it is European-wide. And we are bucking the trend in some parts of the economy. But, you know, do we really want to hand over an economy that is having green shoots but is not there yet to a socialist government? I don't think so, Matt.
People listen to this, Nickie, and they'll be thinking, you've been in government for 14 years.
Yes, I get that.
The economic mess, well, you know, a lot of money was spent during COVID. The economic mess of Liz Truss. We're in a recession. The idea that the Conservative Party can lecture anyone on economic competence is quite a tough sell.
Yeah, and I absolutely accept that. I take that on the chin. I absolutely accept that. But we're now talking about the future. Yeah. Whatever happened in the past, and let's remember how much money we did borrow for COVID, and the Labour Party backed us. I mean, the Labour Party would have probably had us in lockdown for longer if they had been in charge. I think we should have been out earlier. I certainly don't think we should have locked down our schools a second time, and I think that is something that's going to live with us for a generation or two. I see it, you know, for my children's generation. But we have got to think about the future. That is what this next election is about. Not about the last 5 years, 10 years, 14 years. It's about the next 5, the next 10. And absolutely, I get that the Conservatives have not covered ourselves in glory. But I think it's about what we plan to do in the future. And Matt, socialism is never the answer as far as I'm concerned.
OK, let's do some classic exit interview questions then. Would you recommend your job to a friend or someone you cared about?
I think it depends on the person's personality. This is not for people who take things personally. You've got to be a bit tough and have you know, you've got to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to listen to people. It's a mixture. An MP, I think, is a mixture of, you know, being a legislator and a campaigner and a social worker. And a psychiatrist sometimes as well. We are often a person's first port of call and a person's last port of call. And when they come to us as the last port of call, they are very, very desperate. And I've had some heartbreaking stories of people who have just been let down by the system. But it's tough, and you know you don't get thanked, and I'm not saying we should ever get thanked. No, you don't go into politics to well, you shouldn't go into politics to make money or to be thanked. But you only ever really hear the negatives, which I think is fine. I didn't go in it to make, you know, to get plaudits, but I do think that you have to be of a certain personality. But if you have got the fight in you, if you have got the time, and it's all encompassing, your family, you will not see your family. I'm lucky I live in my constituency 24/7. I don't have to travel down to to Cornwall or to Scotland or to the north of England or to the north of Wales, which can take hours. So I'm there. I go home every night. But if you don't, it can be very lonely. I think it can, and I think that's when, you know, some MPs get themselves into some situations that they might not do.
That's a very good euphemism. So you've explained the reason you're standing down. Alex Aiken, of course, is long-standing Cabinet Office communications chief. Has got this new job in the UAE, so that's why you're leaving. So what will you do next? Would you ever come back to politics? The
only job I would like left in politics, if I had the opportunity, is to be Mayor of London, because I think this is a fantastic city, and I think it's being let down at the moment. And I did think really hard about standing this year, but I just felt as an MP in a general election year, it wasn't a very positive, strong message to give to my constituents. Actually, I'm going to try to become Mayor of London first, and if I don't, I'll stand again. That is not what you should be doing as an MP. Your first job is to be the Member of Parliament for your constituency. So I decided not to stand for Mayor this year. But, you know, in 20...
Do you think you'd have done a better job than Susan Hall?
Look, I think she's working it hard. I mean, I think Sadiq is the Labour mayor who just keeps on giving, and all that ridiculous stuff on the overground last week. You know, that we have got young people being murdered on our streets. We've got knife crime out of control. We've got shoplifting. We've got street robberies out of control in this city, and he's renaming railway lines. I mean, it's like, I think we need to get our plans in place, our strategy in place to basically make this city a great city again. Hey, that's a really good saying. Make London great again.
That's a bit Trumpy.
Maybe, yeah.
You can get it on a baseball cap.
I'm not sure.
So what would that be? 2028? 8.
Who knows what I'll be doing? Look, I didn't think, if you asked me 3 months ago where I'd be living in 6 months' time, I'd have been saying Westminster. So who knows? But that's the only job. That's my unfinished business, Matt. I think I'd like to be Mayor of London. Advice
for your successor? Whoever it is. Somebody going into Westminster for the first time.
The best advice I can give is just make friends. Make friends on all sides of the chamber. I've got some great friends in the Labour Party. I'm really lucky that because I've been in the Conservative Party since I was 19, I have my life is actually sitting on the back benches and the front benches. I mean, I've got, Robert Buckland and Simon Hoare introduced me to my husband. Robert Halfon and Sajid Javid got me into the Conservative Party in the first place in university. I've got friends from the last 20 years who, So I was really lucky when I actually got there. I had a solid base of friends already. But you do need your friends. You need your friends for that gallows humour. And believe me, we've had gallows humour in the last 4 years. Yeah. Believe me. You do need people to just let off steam with and to just rant at and to have a laugh with. So you do need to make friends. And never forget, at the end of the day, never forget your first job as an MP is to represent your constituents. It's not about your political career. It's not about going up the ministerial greasy pole. It is about representing your constituents and keeping the promises that you made to get elected in the first place.
Well, Nickie Aiken, some top advice there. Conservative MP for Cities of London and Westminster, standing down at the next election. Thanks for joining us for your exit interview.
Thank you.